Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor, too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days. Or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall. It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, presented by Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store location at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm the host of Seminole Sidelines and will be joined today by the Osceola's Jerry Kutz, Bob Ferrante, Charles Fishbein, and Mark Salva to discuss FSU's 59-3 win over UMass and, of course, about the team's trip to Clemson this weekend to take on the Tigers in Death Valley. But before we get started, I just want to remind our Osceola subscribers to log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to sign up for your 20% discount code for your online purchases. All right, guys, we've got a lot to talk about as we move forward with the Clemson game, but I just kind of want to quickly go back over to the UMass game. And obviously, I think the big thing there was FSU did what it was supposed to do against the very inferior opponent, was dominant from the start of the game, minus the special teams fumble by Travis Jay to start the game. I don't think UMass probably would have scored if they had to drive the ball at all. And, of course, two great things came out of that win. Your frontline guys got some rest in the second half, which will be very important moving forward. And you got a lot of young guys that got a lot of extensive playing time, some for the first time this year, and some of the kids that had played before played more than they had. Bob, I'll start with you. You and I were up in the press box together. What were your takeaways from the game, particularly from the second half when the young kids were playing?
I think what we liked was not just the dominance, but that the veterans were cheering on the freshmen as the freshmen were doing all the right things on the field. And yes, it comes with the asterisks of its UMass, and that it is what it is. But when Jordan Young catches a touchdown pass, it's the sideline erupting. It's not just offensive guys. It's not just Keyshawn Helton. It's the whole team. And when Jarvis Brownlee got the interception, it was the whole team. So I think it's just surrounding young players with confidence. I think we're kind of just seeing how much of a team this is, not just through wins, but it's a close bond that they've built. So I think that's just an overwhelming positive from a game that, let's be honest, it was decided when the contract was signed back in 2019.
Yes, it was. Do you think we can get them to replace Duquesne with UMass?
Let's move past Duquesne.
I'm all for it. Well, any of the young guys in particular stand out to you, Bob?
Yeah, I think, Jordan Young, it was just one, small piece of what he can do. I think we've kind of been curious about him for years, and we're always looking for more receivers to emerge. I don't know if Jordan Young is going to be a guy we're going to see a lot of in the second half of the season, but it was just a piece of what he can do, that he can contribute. He and Chubba Purdy clearly have a connection that's been built on the practice field, and we've seen those quarterback-receiver connections just grow through the years at the college level, and who knows, that could be a connection for the future. Josh Farmer, too, on the defensive side. We know with Dennis Briggs being down that some younger guys, less experienced guys like Malcolm Ray, Josh Farmer are going to be leaned on heavily these last 5 games. And you look at practice, and a guy like Josh Farmer is getting coached up just absolutely hard by Odell Higgins. And so when you see that, you know that Odell is investing the time and knowing that Josh is going to be a guy they need down the stretch.
Yeah. And hey, Mark, from a coach's perspective, why is it so important to go out in a game like this and dominate from start to finish?
Well, to me, it just contributes to your confidence. It contributes to momentum. And I know some people don't really believe in momentum. But when you're able to impose your will in a football game, it's just a learning experience. I mean, when you practice on, the second team, the scout team, and you execute at a high level. That muscle memory is just really important, right? And so for us to go out there and do what we did, I mean, I'm watching early in the game. I'm watching Maurice Smith just toy with that guy with the nose guard from UMass, and I'm watching us execute at a high level. It's just that muscle memory that's just so important to do that. And so hopefully there's carryover in that. And we'll talk about Clemson too. But you talk about building momentum, building confidence. We're on an upswing. We're going to play an opponent that's kind of lost its way a little bit and is kind of on the downswing. And that can, early in the game, especially, that'll affect it, So it's definitely important. And it gives you something to be really positive with the team about. And then, because as a coach, you always hate just beating down on guys all the time. You got to do this, you got to do that. You're not doing it. You are, and it just gives you a chance to really lift guys up. And that's ultimately a better situation than the other.
Jerry, what about you? Anything from that game stand out to you, or any young player performance?
Yeah, I think something that really stood out to me, I was sitting there watching the game, and I kept hearing Gene McDowell speaking to me, from the grave, I guess. But Gene,
how long did you tailgate before the game?
Yeah. But at any rate, Gene he has a favorite expression that just echoed in my head while I was watching that game. And, the expression was that there's a law of sports which requires that all leads shall promptly be surrendered. And Gene's point was, how many times have we, even during the Dynasty era, did we go into a game and just kind of not play very well, play down to the level of the opponent? We did that against, Jacksonville State this year, and we paid a very high price.
And we're going to pay a higher price in December.
And in this game, we did not do that. We learned from our mistake, and we've progressed to the point that we were able to have a good week of practice. We were focused. We went in there and we dominated the game, for the most part, from beginning to end. There were some lapses of focus. But to me, that's a huge step. And we should have very recent memory of what happens when you don't do that. And so to me, the law of sports applied, and, we did not relinquish a large lead. And that enabled us to get those young players into the game. And to speak to that, I would tell you a couple of guys impressed me. The number one guy was Chubba Purdy. And throughout this fall, he's like a true freshman because he was hurt last year and he didn't get a lot of practice reps. He got to look at film, and of course he missed all spring.
He started again.
But each week this fall, he has just gotten better and better. And the practices, we're out there watching those practices every Tuesday and Wednesday. And because of the injuries we've had at quarterback, Chubba's been getting a lot more reps than your third string quarterback normally would get. And I saw progress in him. I mean, I kept saying, I think the kid I want to see him play, because what he's doing at practice, I think, is ready to translate to the game.
Yeah, 5 for 5 with 2 touchdowns, look very comfortable running the offense. And listen, like you said, with the unknown surrounding FSU's top 2 quarterbacks, obviously Jordan's style of play makes him susceptible to injury. And, of course, I think with McKenzie, because of that injury, you don't ever know what you're going to get from 1 week to the next. So I think it's very likely that Chubba may play a vital role in some of these games moving forward. It was fun to see the young offensive lineman get in the game. Zane Harry made a nice block, but the back ran inside instead of outside the hole. He had folded around. Then, of course, Mike Norvell had mentioned Lloyd Willis stood out to him. So it was good to see a couple of those guys get some opportunities. My one disappointment was if you're going to put a quarterback in the game, let him throw the football. They let Tate Rodemaker go in the game, didn't let him throw the football. I would say tell Mike and Kenny, don't put him in. I mean, take Jordan. Chubba could have handed the ball off. You could let him throw a pass to the flat. That's what quarterbacks do. They want to throw the ball. So anyway, that was the disappointing part of the win, was watching that. But anyway, just kind of having fun with that. They didn't want to embarrass UMass any more than they already had. And then, of course, on defense, Amari Cooper, to me, he played a little bit earlier than most of the young guys and had 3 tackles before he went out of the game with an injury, and not sure if he'll be back this week. All right, well, enough about the mess that was UMass. Let's move forward to a game that I think all of us on this call thought on about August 15th would be just one you're going to have to endure. And I'm sure if we could give the coaching staff and players at Florida State a truth serum, they're feeling much better about their chances against Clemson this week than they would have just 7 weeks ago. Clemson is 4-3 after being projected as a college football playoff team, being ranked in the top 5 of most preseason polls. They are struggling to be a middle ground ACC team, as most of the ACC is doing. There's a fight for the middle right now. And, of course, I think everyone's been a little bit surprised, and most of Clemson's issues are on offense. Their offense has been flatter than a 10-year-old case of Dr. Pepper. And, of course, they've the stats, sometimes, as Mark and I were talking about before we started this conversation, taping this podcast, sometimes the stats don't always marry up with what you see on film, but with Clemson's offense, they kind of do. And guys, I just want to briefly talk about, what you guys think of just about, we can get into specifics and details, but just what you think about FSU's chances this week as opposed to what you thought coming into this season about this particular ball game. And Jerry, I'll start with you.
I think we all had it as a loss coming into the end of the year. And what we were hoping for is that FSU could do something it didn't do last year, and that's compete. Not capitulate, as Mark likes to say, but to go ahead and compete. And when you're playing an opponent that is much better than you, to be competitive and to fight and to not, surrender emotionally. And I think that was my goal for Clemson game. I thought, if we could just do that at Clemson, that would be a positive attribute. But that's not what I'm thinking now. Now I'm thinking that Florida State has a slugger's chance of winning this game. And I go in there very positive. And I'm always guarded, but I can't help myself for feeling like because of the progress of Florida State and the fact that Clemson is having their post Jameis Winston blues, they haven't figured themselves out yet. It gives us a chance.
Yeah, I think it. We'll get into this a lot more later, but I think it goes to show you that just how good Trevor Lawrence, ATN, and the offensive lineman that's playing. They lost 5 guys to the pros. I think it just tells you just how good those guys were. Mark, what's your thoughts going into the game about? We'll get into the keys later, but that's just as far as FSU's chances this week compared to what you thought 7 or 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, even as much as 3 or 4 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, he went from hopeless to hope, right? And I think that's what Jerry pretty much said, is that, early in the year or in a preseason, this was, even the most staunch FSU fan, me included, would say that we don't have a chance and that there was no hope going into this game. And we've now shifted to there's hope, understanding that there are things that have to happen in the game for us to do it, but it's not a hopeless situation. And, so I'm really interested in this game. Whereas before I would have been like Jerry, I just don't want to see us just get embarrassed like we did UMass, and I think that's kind of how we thought of this game going into the year. But now there's an element of hope, and that's hope is a strong thing, and both self-belief is a strong thing. I think this team's going in believing that it can compete and it can win, and that is 3/4 of the battle, man. If they go in believing they have a chance to win, then we got a chance to win.
Well, and I agree with you. Confidence and momentum can be a funny thing in football. FSU seems to have it. Clemson does not. I watched Dabo at the end of that ball game. I watched his press conference on Sunday. This clearly looks like a rattled football team. Bob, what are your thoughts going into Clemson on Saturday as far as champ?
Yeah, I mean, this feels like a very confident Florida State team just based on how they're acting and how they're talking, in our interviews with them on Tuesday and Wednesday. And on the Clemson side, it almost feels like they're just battling. They're battling maybe to keep up with the brand and the logo and to keep up with where their past teams had performed. I thought it was interesting, Dabo threw out some numbers, I believe on Tuesday night, about just how many guys they've gone through. They've started 43 guys in 7 games. Last year they started 40 guys in 12 games in a COVID year where of course you're going to have different starters. So they've had to change in and out personnel and just kind of make do. And I'm sure a lot of that is more issues on the offensive side of the ball as they're trying to find their identity. How do they score points? How do they get to 20? And that doesn't feel like a Clemson team. Whereas on the other side, I think Florida State's really got that confidence coming off 3 straight wins, feeling like they're not making mistakes and finally getting a lot of injured guys healthy to the point where they're playing with their core. They've got their core guys out there, and Clemson on the opposite side just does not have those guys.
Yeah, they took another hit on Saturday and lost their most experienced offensive lineman, Matt Bockhurst, who had, I believe, 20 starts and 47 career appearances. He is gone for the year. And guys, this is only going to buoy your beliefs. And I do believe to some extent you can make numbers look any way you want. But listen to these numbers for Clemson on offense. 117th in the nation in total offense, last in the ACC. 85th in rushing offense. You just lost the all-time leader in the ACC in rushing, and you follow that up with 145 yards per game. 111th in passing offense, which if you had said that last year after watching the Big Cinco, DJ, and I can't pronounce his last name, we'll just call him Clemson's starting quarterback, he had 2 absolute great games as a starter. It looks nothing like that this year. And then, of course, scoring offense, guys, 115th in the nation. And to further illustrate how much they have struggled on offense, Dabo Swinney and Tony Elliott's offense has not scored more than 19 points in regulation against any of its FBS opponents this season. It scored 21 against NC State, 7 of those coming in an overtime loss. These numbers just don't match up with that big tiger paw on the side of the helmet. So, again, to your point, Jerry, I think particularly FSU's defense against Clemson's offense is probably more than a puncher's chance. But anyway, just the numbers are glaring. It's amazing. Mark, I'm going to ask you from a FSU defensive standpoint, what are the keys to keeping this Clemson offense kind of locked down like it has been all year?
Well, to me, it's about hope again. So I'm sure Clemson is going to come in convicted to right the ship, and they see it as an opportunity to turn their season around, right? And that's how they're looking at this game. If I was Dabo, that's how I'd approach it. for us, we cannot give them hope. We have to get on them early and often. We can't let them build momentum in the running game. And then definitely got to, obviously be effective in the passing game, make DJ really uncomfortable in the pocket. However is the best way to do that. And it's obviously, we can't settle in any one thing. To me, that's going to be the key, how we get on them early, because if they start to get a level of confidence, that could be trouble. They could start maybe coming out of their funk a little bit. But you know what? I see a great matchup with their offensive line is not great. I think our defensive line is playing really well. Our secondary has played a lot better, tackled a lot better. I think we got a chance to really impact the game defensively versus their offense.
Yeah, their interior people on the offensive line, their guards, right guard, center, and left guard have a combined 9 starts. So I think Fabian Lovett having a big day would go a long way. He's going to be playing against some inexperienced players that have not had a lot of success. So really hoping to see a big day out of the interior defensive line for FSU. Bob, what are some of your keys for FSU defensively?
Yeah, I think you've got to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback as best you can, and that's Florida State's strength as a defensive front. They're testing, moving around Jermaine Johnson because they know offensive coordinators are trying to scheme up how to block 11, how to make sure he doesn't get to the quarterback. We've seen Keir Thomas slide inside, rush off the edge. We're going to see some creativity, I think, out of the Florida State defensive coaches, just trying to figure out how best to get after the quarterback and put pressure. And honestly, to some extent, masking some of your deficiencies at linebacker, until we see somebody really stepping up to help out Kalen Deloach, until maybe an Emmett Rice comes back. So I think some consistency in the secondary really, really helps here. Having Jamie Robinson settled in at safety, having Kevin Knowles settled in at nickel, and with 7 games of experience, that secondary has, I think, stabilized to the point where you're making plays in the red zone, 4th down stops, interceptions, all that. It gives you kind of that promise of how things can come together, I think, for Florida State's defense, as far as, yet again, keeping Clemson kind of sub 20 points.
Yeah, and I agree with what Coach Fuller said in his press conference. I think you've got to get to the quarterbacks early, have success, force them 3 and outs right off the bat to keep that, keep them in that mental state of mind that, hey, we're still struggling. We're not going to do much better against this group. And then, of course, the one thing that Florida State had not done very well up until the North Carolina game was give up big pass plays. Clemson is not very good at it. They're 114th in pass plays over 20 yards. And I think that Florida State's really got to limit those big pass plays, which they have done the last 2 games. And if that keeps up and you're able to shut down the run with your front 7, and not have to use those 4 guys and run support in the secondary, I think that's going to benefit the defense greatly. But I agree with everything you guys said.
Here's the other thing too. Think about this. So, not too long ago, we come out on offense and something bad would happen: a sack, fumble, penalty, drop passes, something like that. And what's the first thing we all say? Oh, here we go again, right? And they're in that mode. And the sooner we can force something like that, get them thinking, oh my gosh, it's more of the same, the better off we're going to be, and the more we're going to have belief, and the less they're going to have belief. And we're familiar with that place. They're not.
Yeah.
And I mean, the sooner we can get them looking at each other, the better off we're going to be, and get the crowd turning on them, right? Because this is in their place. If we can force some of these things, you're going to start hearing moaning from the crowd because they're not used to it either. And that plays in our favor.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's all about a fast start for the defense, creating some 3 and outs. Don't let them get to drive the ball. I think everyone's exactly right on that. And I'm not sure there really is another key. I'm sure there are some things they're going to do schematically that are going to be key, but I just think keeping Clemson in that questioning mind frame, not looking for success that they're having a hard time finding. You want to continue to keep them in that mode. Of course, on the other side of the ball, FSU's offense has a tremendous challenge. Clemson's defense has been just as impressive as their offense has been disappointing. They are among the leaders in just about every top half of every statistical category on defense, and sometimes in the top quarter. They have got 19 players that have got credited with at least one tackle for a loss. They're very aggressive. They've got 13 players that have 1 sack, 19 players that have been credited with a quarterback pressure. So they're going to bring the heat from everywhere. They are deep, they are fast, and they are physical. Mark, what are the keys for the FSU offense against Clemson?
Yeah, this is the part I'm really looking forward to. Venables is very creative in his defensive design. He is not going to let us just jam the ball down their throat. He's going to try to outnumber us any number of different ways. He's going to have us, based on our formations and our personnel and all that stuff, he's going to have a plan to stifle our running game and to try to hem in Jordan Travis and not let him affect the game in a big way. So now it's on Dillingham and Norvell to have enough offense to, try to figure out a way around that, right? What is going to be our counterpunch to whatever it is he presents us on defense? Because he's going to do those things. How do we utilize our personnel and formations? Because we're very multiple on offense. So I think early in the game, there's going to be a lot of feeling out. There's going to be a lot of, we're going to try a lot of different things. We're probably going to try a lot of formations. We're going to probably try some new things, some things probably we've had in our back pocket for the last couple of weeks, and really try to see if we can hit on something. And then he's going to respond in kind, and then we got to have enough offense to be able to counter that. So this is going to be like a chess match that is going to, which staff is going to really come out on top is going to be based on, how quick can we identify where the opportunities are and can we take advantage of them and then execute at a high level. And, oh, by the way, we got to handle the crowd. Okay. You can't underestimate the noise factor. They're going to be, the fans are going to be fired up. Are we mature enough? And can we handle that pressure of the crowd, and the crowd noise and the things that go along with that? Because I don't think we've really had to face that this year. So this is going to be a new kind of thing that we're going to have to deal with, another thing that we're going to have to deal with.
Yep. Bob, what are your thoughts on the offense and the challenge that Florida State has ahead of it? What do you think the keys are for them to be successful?
I think to Mark's point, the crowd noise is a huge concern because this program hasn't seen that probably since Clemson or Florida 2 years ago when they went on the road. And a lot of these players, especially on offense, were not on the roster. Looking at it, today, no quarterback who threw a pass in the 2019 Clemson game is on the roster. No running back who ran the ball is going to be playing in this game. A lot of offensive linemen have changed. A lot of receivers have changed, except for guys like, Keyshawn Helton and Cam McDonald. So pre-snap communication, pre-snap alignment, hand signals, all those little things that just have to be done just right when the noise is intense in a way that you haven't seen it before. I think it's honestly almost more on Florida State in some regards than Clemson. And I don't say that to knock the Clemson defense because they've got a tremendous linebacker in James Skalski and what he's going to bring. But I think the only other key that I would want to outline is Florida State's got to take some shots deep, got to somehow get some pass plays in there, take some shots, whether it's Ja'Kai Douglas or an Andrew Parchment, Keyshawn Helton, get a couple of passes deep just so that you make those safeties honest and stay back. Otherwise, I think Clemson's just going to kind of crowd the box and try to defend the run as best as possible.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think they're going to have to be very balanced offensively. I think they're going to have to find some consistency in the pass game. But if from lacking that, they're certainly going to have to find some big chunk plays. And here's why. Clemson is number one in red zone defense. They've only allowed 5 touchdowns and 7 field goals 60% of the time. They're only allowing opponents to score 60% of the time, and 7 of those 12 times have been field goals. So you're not going to drive the ball on them when that field gets shorter. Secondly, the other reason they're going to have to find some success in the passing game, as we all know, FSU runs the ball extremely well. They're 9th in the nation in runs over 10 yards with 56. Hello, Clemson. 8th in the nation in runs allowed of 10 yards or more. Only 19 all season. That's a little bit over 2 a game they're giving up. Now, they're also very good at now allowing passes over 20 yards. They've only allowed 17, which is 16th in the nation. And, of course, Florida State has only had 17 on offense, which is 104th. So they certainly have a task ahead of them. But I do believe that they have to be very balanced offensively. I think they've got to find some chunk plays in the passing game, if not some consistency. They're going to have to do it from the pocket some too. And I think also there's some of this. FSU is going to have to make its field goals when it gets inside Clemson territory, because what the analytics or the numbers tell us is they're not going to score touchdowns once they get inside the 20. So the kicking game to me is going to be very important for FSU offensively. They're going to have to get into field goal range, and when they do, make those field goals. But I do think.
But to your point, that's why I think it's important that we have enough offense in the game. You know, those chunk plays that you're talking about are going to come on plays that are probably outside of our normal offense. You know what I mean? They're gonna have some stuff drawn up, and we got to have enough of those chunky kind of plays where you maybe run them 1 or 2 times a game. You know, kind of like the NFL does. You know, a lot of times they'll draw up stuff that they know is only going to work 1 or 2 times, and when you get those opportunities and you get the right look, you got to hit on them. And we got to have enough of those things in the plan. And I'm not talking about necessarily trick plays, but I'm talking about those things that are kind of outside your normal scheme, that, you know, you give a look, they're going to expect this, but now you're going to hit that. And, you know, you might get hit it once, you might get hit it twice, but you're not going to be able to hit it more than that. And we got to take advantage of that stuff when they present itself. Yeah, I agree. Hey, listen, I wouldn't mind if they wheeled back out the punt Ruski in this one. Well, you know that we're going to try some stuff. Yeah, I agree. I think Mike has always been a gambler on 4th down and things of that nature. But I do think that we're going to see some trick plays, and it would be fun to see if they could reinvent them. But you bring that's a great point too, because and Coach Bowden was the best at this, and it's knowing when to run those plays and calling them at the right time. And I think we got burned a little bit by that early in the year. And the timing and and when to call those plays is going to be so key. You hope that Mike and Kenny are going to be really on top of it and feeling it and seeing it. They got a good feel for that kind of thing. That's going to be critical. Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a time and place to be aggressive, but I don't think it ever trumps being aware of what's going on, what the flow of the game is like, what the feel of both teams is like. I think that's just as important as being aggressive. So I agree. Pick your spots, pick them at the right times. And, it's always a gamble, and some of it's going to work and some of it's not. But I think you're right. I think we're going to see some different things from FSU this week. Guys, I do have a question for you. FSU has thrown the ball 28 times in the last 2 games. That includes Chubba Purdy's 5 for 5 against UMass. FSU has to throw the ball at least 28 times to win this game. True or false? I'll go with you, Mark. 28, huh? At least 28. 25. Let's say 25 times or more to win the ball game. Does that include screens? Sure. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I mean, if we're going to win this game, we're going to have to score at least 4 touchdowns, I think. And, we're going to have to run probably 80 plays. So, yeah, we definitely need to throw at least 25 times Bob, if we're going to win this game. FSU has to throw at least 25 passes in this ball game to win.
Yeah, you had me thinking at 28, but at 25, I think I could see that happening, especially, as Mark's saying, with screens. Throws out into space using Lawrence Toafili, for example, using a guy who is technically a running back, but is probably a better receiver and a guy who can get out there in space and do something, make something happen, create a big play. I think, I would say true on that 25.
Jared?
And does that include just the quarterback throwing the ball?
Yeah. Quarterback throwing the ball. Yeah. Quarterback throwing the ball.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I'm going to be the devil's advocate just for interest, but I would definitely have agreed with that earlier in the year. That this is a game where we're going to be in a track meet, or we're going to be playing from behind. But I think the key to that question, and I'm going to say less than 25, and the key will be, can we run the ball? And I would think if we can run the ball, we're going to run it. And we've had success with that. We did it at North Carolina. I know Clemson's got a much different defense, but I think they would like to run this ball and not throw it any more than they have to. So if you balance it up.
Oh, I agree with that. I don't think they want to throw it any more than they have to. I just think they're going to be forced to in this ball game, more so than they have been the last two, for sure. Now, in my takeaway Tuesday, I predicted that we will probably see a second quarterback, and I think that's going to be Mackenzie Milton. Is that you think that is a possibility?
Yeah, I would think so. And my logic on that is Mackenzie's been there. He's done it. He's played in the big house. I don't know if he's ever played in anything as big as this, but he'll definitely play in front of a loud crowd, and poise will be, very critical. I think the experience he had at Notre Dame, where he threw an interception and had a fumble, I think that'll help him in this game. I think we'll see Mackenzie. I mean, I'll say this though, if we can run the ball and Travis can do his thing, we're not going to be switching quarterbacks for the sake of it.
Right. I hope if we see Mackenzie, it's on our own terms.
Yes.
Right? I hope it's not because Jordan got hurt. I hope it's because there's some things that we want to do offensively that he does really well, and that, there's an opportunity to make some plays that he can, for whatever reason, does a great job with, right? If it's because, we're struggling, we're behind, we got to air it out, or Jordan gets hurt, then, that's probably not a good sign for us. If we do it on our own terms, then I hope we do see him.
Yeah, well, listen, I think it's a big deal to have his experience in your hip pocket if you're Mike Norvell, and I still think that he is probably if you're going to have to drop back and stay in the pocket, which you hope you can do some. I think he's, listen, I think there's going to be a time and place for him somewhere around in the rest of this season, and I have a gut feeling it could be this week. Also, just want to talk, obviously we've talked about FSU's offensive line and the fact that they really need to be at 100% health. And we watched Dylan Gibbons go out last week, and Devontae Love-Taylor did not play. How much better are FSU's chances with both of those kids playing versus not playing, Mark?
Well, our chances depend on healthy guys up front for sure, because history shows that during the course of the game, somebody twists an ankle, somebody pops a shoulder, something usually happens during the course of the game where somebody's got to come out. And the healthier we are up front, especially with those first five guys, I think with those first five guys is our best chance, only because of the communication, because there's going to be a lot of nonverbal. There's going to be a lot of, scheme stuff that we're going to have to know. And, having those first guys in there with experience is going to be so critical for us to maintain consistency and to matriculate the ball down the field.
Well, we do need to matriculate it a little bit. Bob, what about you on the offensive line? How key is the health of those two players?
I think it's everything. I really do. And yeah, I mean, we've seen Devontae Love-Taylor throughout the week at practice, and he looks good. He looks active, good communication, as usual with him and Maurice Smith. And I think that's a really super encouraging sign. This is an offense that's going to hinge around how well can you block it up and just buy a little bit of time for Jordan Travis, whether it's RPO or design run. Can you buy a little bit of time for a downfield throw? The downfield throws aren't going to be there if you don't have guys like Devontae Love-Taylor and Dylan Gibbons, and because it's just a drop off down to Bavian Johnson and Brady Scott. So I think the whole game plan truly does hinge around those guys, and you start to make adjustments later in the week as a coaching staff if you don't feel good about one or both of them.
Well, and then, of course, Bob, I'm going to throw in one other key, and I love this key, average starting field position. FSU's defense, if it can hand its offense some short field possessions, I think it astronomically helps FSU because Clemson's going to be so difficult, or has been so difficult, to drive the ball against, particularly as the field gets shorter. So I think that's going to be key. But listen, it's going to be a fun Saturday afternoon in Death Valley. I think this team's going in with a lot of confidence, and it's I think, as we've talked about, belief is a funny thing on a football team. It sure seems like, as you guys said, this team is playing together, and Clemson looks a little bothered right now. I don't think they're quite as confident as Florida State is, and I think it's going to be a great game to watch. Should be a great afternoon in Clemson, South Carolina, 3:30 kickoff. I believe ESPN, right, Bob?
Yep.
Okay. Well, listen, anything stand out to you guys at practice this week before we wrap up?
I think just one thing, we probably have to touch on special teams to some extent, because it sometimes gets glossed over in the big scheme of offense and defense. But Florida State's got to be significantly better in terms of coverage and consistently securing the ball and returning it. We did see Trayshawn Ward being a return man, and I think that's a good choice there because he securely handles the ball and he's got vision and some wiggle. I think that's what we kind of want to see from the return game. So I think this does feel like a game on Saturday that could hinge on how your special teams plays. Pat, like you say, field position is really important. Well, kick and punt returns get you better field position. That seems to be very critical to me, and I think that's kind of one of the big storylines we're going to be watching on Saturday.
Yeah, I feel much better if we quit fielding punts inside the 10-yard line or letting them roll to the 5. But it's going to be harder to drive the ball 80-plus yards against Clemson than it was UMass. So I hope they get that straight. I'm sure that's what they're being – it happened 3 or 4 times, so I'm sure it's what they're coached. But that's modern football in an analytical world, I imagine. Back when Mark was coaching and I was involved in high school and football and as a GA at South Carolina, you never went – your heels were on the 10 and they never went back. So we'll see what happens. But, guys, it's going to be a great Saturday for football. There's all kind of big games in the ACC. And, of course, looking forward to catching up with you guys again next week. Bob, I did want to ask you quickly, FSU has started basketball, and they got another big-time commitment, I believe, 4th commitment for this next class. What's happening with hoops? I know you were at practice a couple of days ago.
Yeah, the commitments are kind of funneling in. They're kind of stocking up for the 22 class. A lot of those signings can be official in November with the early signing period. The basketball team, just based on one practice, my goodness, there's athleticism and defense and height, and it looks like a fun team to watch. Their exhibition opener is going to be Thursday night, 7:00, and we'll be there to cover that. I think this feels like a really good Leonard Hamilton team. It's going to be a team that's going to have some growing pains just because of transfers, freshmen, newcomers, blending in with veterans. It's not going to be a team that right out of the gate you're going to see them, rattle off 10 straight wins or something like that. So I would just say, be patient with the team, but enjoy them, and you're going to have some fun watching this team, whether it's on TV or in the stands.
And if you are a basketball fan, FSU basketball fan, which if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are, we just released our first Tuck Talk of the season, which is our FSU season preview for hoops. And, of course, Tuck Talk will come to you, I believe, on a weekly basis from on out. Right, Bob?
Yeah, this week we had a couple of the green team guys, Harrison Prieto and Justin Lindner, and they're almost senior citizens at 25. Hanging out in college as grad students, but they're just an extension of the coaching staff. How good that they've kind of led the young players along through the off season, and they're a fixture throughout practices, coaching and teaching, almost as much as the coaching staff in some regard. So they're a key part of the team.
Well, and of course, I believe the baseball team starts its fall schedule, I believe, this weekend with a game. So that's probably going to conflict with the football game, I believe. I'm not sure what time it starts, but it's a busy weekend for Florida State athletics. That's for sure. But, hey, guys, I appreciate you joining me. We appreciate our Osceola subscribers tuning in. And if you're just a podcast listener, please consider joining the Osceola. You can go to theosceola.com, go to the subscription tab, and go to the discount code field and enter FSU20, FSU20 to receive a 20% discount off our annual rate of $74.95. If you want to give us a try for a month, we do have a monthly rate of $6.95. But again, appreciate Alumni Hall being our sponsor for Seminole Sidelines, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next week and talking about Clemson and moving forward to the NC State game. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Scalp them.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!